Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Today I wanted to go over a bullshit article from CNBC and a bullshit study from the Fed that it's referencing. One of the things that bothers me about a lot of writing that came out around my generation is that because it's writing on the internet, it does this bullshit where they will just URL or they'll hyperlink to something like this, and then magically this is just supposed to mean like we could just move past that now, right? Like, we don't have to discuss any of what's in the study that we're actually quoting. It's there, so we can just move on to the next thing. And I always feel this aggravation when I see an article that's littered with URLs, and I've made this mistake myself, and I try to catch myself, and I try to stop myself with it because no, I'm not. We're not accepting that. Just because you made a URL to it or a hyperlink to it does not mean that we're going to immediately accept this as true. So there's a bunch of stuff that's in the article that we're going to go through and in this ridiculous study. I honestly don't know what I hate more, the article or the study. Like one of my theories when it comes to IQ, and this is just a theory, this is some bro science over here, I just want to be clear, is like as IQ goes up, maybe you get smarter, but after a certain point, I don't think it's linear. Like you have a higher IQ, you're smarter. I feel like it kind of goes off a cliff. It's like a seesaw or a V, where like as you have a higher IQ, you're smarter, and then after a certain point, you start to think, oh, I have a high IQ, therefore I am smart, and then you just wind up writing shit like what is in this study. This seems like one of those great examples of somebody whose brain is infinitely smarter than mine that simultaneously produced a complete piece of shit by writing stuff like this in Greek and trying to pretend that this means that you have any understanding of why the world economy is the way it is. And let's just dig into it. So this is an article from CNBC. Americans are holding on to devices longer than ever, and it's costing the economy. Americans are hanging on to their smartphones much longer than they did a decade ago, but new releases like the Apple iPhone 17 can entice customers to upgrade. I'm not even interested in the key points. Let's just get to the article. If you are holding your aging printer or cracked smartphone longer than you had planned, you're not alone. Heather, 69, retired and living in Tucson, Arizona, is content with her phone even though it is old by smartphone standards. My Samsung Galaxy A71 is 6 years old. It's hanging in there surprisingly well. I've had issues with it and still do, but they're minor. Said, I love Samsung phones, but I can't afford a new one right now. A new phone will be a luxury. The average American now holds onto their smartphone for 29 months, according to a recent study by Reviews.org, and that cycle is getting longer. The average was 22 months back in 2016. While squeezing as much life out of your device as possible may save money in the short run, especially amid widespread fears about the strength of the consumer and job market, it might cost the economy in the long run, especially when device hoarding occurs at the level of corporations. Research released by the Federal Reserve last month concludes that each additional year companies delay upgrading equipment results in a productivity decline of about 1/3%, with investment patterns accounting for approximately 55% of the productivity gaps between advanced economies. We hyperlink to this, and we're supposed to accept this as true. We're going to dig through that thing in a minute, but let's just read the rest of the article. The good news: businesses in the U.S. are generally quicker to reinvest in replacing aging equipment. The Federal Reserve report shows that if European productivity had matched U.S. investment patterns starting in 2000, the productivity gap between the U.S. and European economic heavyweights would have been reduced by 29% for the UK, 35% for France, and 101% for Germany. Experts agree that lost productivity and inefficiency are the unintended consequences of people and businesses clinging to aging technology. Think about how much internet speeds would have changed in the past decade or more. In the 2010s, 100 megabit per second speeds were considered high speed and very good. A short 10 years later, and we're operating at 1,000 megabit speeds, which is roughly 10 times faster, says Cassandra Cummings, CEO of New Jersey-based electronics design company Thomas Instrumentation. Operating at higher gigabit speeds requires different electronic hardware, and a lot of the older technology can't handle it. Those devices were engineered when no one could fathom speeds that would be that much mainstream. That can be a drain on nationwide networks as well. Small businesses in particular lose valuable hours each year due to lagging systems, creating what economists call the productivity drag. Benabez said, on a national scale, this translates to billions of dollars in lost output and reduced innovation. While keeping devices longer may seem financially and environmentally responsible, the hidden cost is the quieter erosion of economic dynamism and competitive. I don't have the impulse control to finish the article. I am sorry. If you want to read it, there's a link down below. Let's go over to this fucking bullshit study from the Fed. This is from the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. So first thing, let's go over CNBC's point. So you're keeping the devices too long. That's bad for productivity. And the Fed proved it with this article. And this is what they're citing at the beginning. So the first thing that we need to do is go over how it is they are defining an investment. So let's just look for the word investment with Control F and figure out what it is they're doing to define investment. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, the time elapsed since a firm's last investment spike, defined as an annual investment rate exceeding 20%. So that, let's just go over how it is they're defining investment, because they're saying that by not investing in new technology, by not replacing your fucking phone and your printer, by not buying a 10 gigabit switch, your business is making less money. And that's why we're lagging, some countries are lagging behind. So investment age is going to be years since the last investment spike, and investment spike is an annual investment rate of greater than 20%. So this is now a binary scoreboard. A 19.9% investment rate means no investment. That's not measured. Anything under 20%. A 20% investment rate is a spike, and then the age will then reset to zero. So there's so many reasons this is wrong. So firstly, 19.9 versus 20%, that's not a technical difference. That's a rounding and timing difference that's being treated like a real-world transformation when it's an arbitrary accounting number that you've chosen. It's going to measure lumpy spending, like I spent a bunch of money on this, rather than actually measuring modernization. To try to make a simple example, let's say that we were to make it a fixed cost, and let's say we're measuring it in terms of a month, because this is the way that I've upgraded some of my older PCs. Let's say that one person buys a $1,000 new computer. That is counted as an upgrade because it's above our threshold that I'll set at $995. Whereas somebody else says, okay, I'm going to spend $980 on a new CPU and a motherboard. Then next month, I'm going to spend $980 buying the best RAM. Then next month, I'm going to spend $980 buying a GPU. Then next month, I'm going to spend $980 buying 2 NVMe SSDs in RAID 0. Using this type of metric, the person who bought a $1,000 mid-range PC would be counted as investing in their business, while the person that was slowly upgrading in smaller chunks the whole time, who spent over $3,500 on their PC, did not invest in their business. It's fucking ridiculous, and it doesn't have any sort of real-world concept or understanding of how many businesses upgraded incrementally rather than in a full lump sum. At my company, I may not buy a new soldering iron tip for every single person. I may not be an entirely new workbench at the exact same time. I may slowly modernize workstations as people are phasing out their old ones. And because I may spend 18% on that per workstation rather than 20%, that's not going to show up in this stupid fucking study. Thirdly, they're treating things that are unlike as identical, right? So let's say that you have, I could buy real estate. I could buy a bunch of televisions for the front of the store. I could buy a switch for the front, a computer that operates the credit card machine, the computer that Kevin uses to look up customers, and the phone. I could buy new soldering irons for people. I could buy a store. Like these are so many different things that you could be looking at. You're treating things that have nothing to do with each other as if they have something to do with investing in technology. This is just measuring investment in general, in addition to the fact that it's only measuring something as an investment if it passes a specific 20% arbitrary threshold, and it's not comparable across business types at all. Like when we're talking about productivity, when you look at what they're using, they're calling this, so what is this thing called? It's TFP. I forget what that thing even fucking stands for. Here we go. Firm level total factor productivity. That's what it means. So they're measuring TFP with sales, constrained capital stock, employment, and again, so sales. I mean, that's a big part of what they're even using to measure productivity. So let's say these people, again, this is the problem with the IQ thing. Like, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what 90% of this shit is. I barely passed calculus 1. I don't know what this is, right? But I understand. But here's the thing that I understand that whoever the fuck wrote this does not. That when you're talking about something like sales, what if I simply lowered the price that I was charging for a good or service? My firm is now going to be considered less productive. And further, how do you acknowledge what is and is not productive? Like if I have an oil company, how many barrels of oil was I able to pump out of the ground and what's the quality of it? If I figured out a way to allow my food distribution company to work with fewer employees because I figured out I could lower quality and keep the price the same, am I more productive versus a company that's figured out new ways to make food that's actually better for people but makes a slightly less profit margin? If I'm a daycare company, are we measuring productivity based on how well we treat the children and how well adjusted those children are in their lives? How much cortisol is flowing through their body when they get taken back to their parents? Or are we measuring it based on this firm up their prices versus that firm? This formula pretends that a chip fabrication plant, an oil refinery, a daycare, a repair shop, a grocery store are just all going to be measuring productivity by the same fucking formula, and that's just ridiculous. Let's just talk about different types of spending that I could do because they brought up the whole network switch and everything being faster. Now, Kevin at my store uses a computer that I'm fairly certain does not even have gigabit Ethernet in the front of the store. And the switch is a 10100 switch. I don't even think it's a gigabit switch. That switch connects three things. It connects a voice over IP phone that is using an absolute and utter maximum of like 200 kilobit per second at any given point in time. It connects a credit card machine, which is using virtually nothing. And it connects a computer that loads text customer records of repairs that we've done, where they're located, and what we did for the customer. That system is a system that I could upgrade. Let's say that I got a new switch that's 2.5 gigabit per second. I got new machinery that all works at 2.5 gigabit per second for him. That would be quite an upgrade. I'd be spending a good amount of money on the networking switch. I'd be spending a good amount of money on a new computer that does absolutely jack shit for me. If I'm ever at a point where my customer relationship management system, the way that I load my customer records, performs better when I have 100 megabytes a second versus 10 megabytes a second, I hope I'm dead by then, because that means that shit is so fucking bloated, I don't even want to see it. I don't even think that computer has a USB-C port on it, so I'd wind up buying a new computer because it's like a mini PC. I would waste so much on that. Versus, let's say that I bought a T30-KN soldering iron tip to replace the soldering iron tips that each one of my bench technicians is using. That would actually be a much lower amount of money that I spend, but that would actually matter. This is not, you can't measure that easily. And more importantly, because the first upgrade is one that would actually cost more money, that may be something that gets measured as an investment versus the second one, which may not even be measured because, again, this is using a binary metric for it. Investment could be a symptom of issues at your company. You're just spending on shit because you're guessing and you don't even know what's actually wrong. Spending a bunch of money, because again, we're not talking about the company invested in their technology. We're talking about any time that 20% got spent. That could mean that you're just flailing and trying random new shit. That doesn't even necessarily mean that your company is being more productive, nor does it mean that your company is actually investing in more technology. This article tries to make the claim that a time since 20% spike in total firm productivity based on this bullshit measurement means that buying newer devices makes you more productive. And it's complete and utter garbage. It's total bullshit. It's a complete propaganda piece. The article is almost as shitty as the Fed study, in my opinion. And again, a lot of people may read this and think like, this person is smarter than me. And you know what? I don't think that means they're smarter than you. This means this person probably has a higher IQ than you. But as I say, higher IQ can mean you're smarter, but at some point it just kind of goes off a cliff where like you have too much IQ for your own good. And everybody knows somebody like this. Everybody knows somebody who's like a fucking genius programmer who's a fucking idiot at every other thing in their life. Like one of the best artists you've ever met, and then you hear them talk about politics. One of the people that is like one of the best people that you've ever met at doing accounting, and then you watch them try to cook something and like they manage to fuck up ramen noodles. When you read things like this, go through it piece by piece and try to turn it into digestible pieces, because this is not something that's easy for me. I don't know what 90% of this is, and my brain just doesn't engage with math the way a lot of other people are going to look at it. I'm not as intelligent as the person that wrote that study. I know that. But again, it was one of those things where when you read shit like this, you may want to cast it off as bullshit immediately because you have no idea what this thing means. But I try to approach this the same way that I would approach MacBook board repair, or the same way I approached electronics repair in the mid-2000s and late 90s when I was a kid and just starting to get interested in it. Like, I don't know what this thing, I'm never going to be able to read a schematic, I thought. This is just impossible. Okay, what does this thing do? That's a transistor. Wow. Okay. What is a transistor? There's silicone, germanium, a substrate, a PN junction. Oh, okay. Let's try to explain like I'm five. Let's because continue going down the rabbit hole and do one piece and this and this and this and this. And then when you try taking those pieces apart, you may not necessarily be as intelligent as the person who wrote the study, but you've done enough work to realize that what you're reading is complete and utter bullshit. Before I even started taking this apart, I just had a feeling that it was going to be total and utter bullshit. And then the facts backed up that it was. Let me know what you think of this article. Do you think that device hoarding is actually costing us in the economy because it genuinely makes people less productive? Or do you think that people holding onto their older devices is just making companies at the top of the S&P 500 worry because they make money off of you buying new shit that you don't actually need? Again, for me, like when I just look at the examples they've given, like a phone, like the iPhone 17, Grade A Under A put it best, I think 10 years ago. When you look at a flagship phone, bring it closer to your face and add $50 to it. That's what it feels like to buy the new one. When I look at phones now, it's like, okay, you went from having 4 cameras to having 5, but it's not that type of innovation that's exciting enough for me to actually want to buy something else. When I look at the HTC Incredible versus the BlackBerry Storm, that was a giant leap forward. When you look at the Nokia 3310 versus a BlackBerry 8330, that was a big leap forward. The leap forward with a Pixel 8 to a Pixel 9, it's just not compelling to a lot of people. And you're trying to gaslight them into believing that if they get an RTX 5080 instead of an RTX 4070, they're going to be more productive. That a 10 gigabit switch is going to be better than a 2.5 gigabit switch, even if what that is being used for is literally routing a phone call, credit card number, and a customer ticket number. And it's not. You're trying to oversimplify this and pretend that you can take all these complex variables across all these industries and just magically measure it with one of these things. And while you may have a much higher IQ than I do to know what half of this fucking shit means, you're not smarter than the person reading this who knows that there's just no way in hell you're going to take an oil refinery and a daycare and a company that produces speakers and a plumber and a political lobbying firm and just come up with some magic formula that measures productivity across all of them. Like, no. I reject the premise, and as soon as you read it, you likely will too. I probably repeated myself many times in this video, and I probably will not have edited it out because this is one of the first articles that I've read in a really long time that caused me to rage that hard at my screen, and I'm not in the mood for editing. So that's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. Fuck CNBC for being full of shit, and fuck the Fed for this fucking stupid article. Yeah. See you later. Bye now.